Moving on with chapter 2, we've already talked about T accounts. I want to take you back in the book and show you that the T account debit and credit section does go through the rules for debit and credit. They go through all the various types of accounts and show you where the increase and decrease side is. The need to know, I love to push those. These are the types of questions that might be asked of you. Identify the normal balance. That's a fancy way of saying, where's its plus side? Identify the plus side of each of the following accounts. So either debit or credit. So you go through, and the first step is like looking at the account name. You have to know, is it an asset, a liability? What kind of account is it? Prepaid rent. It's an asset. Therefore, it has a debit normal balance or debit plus side. Be able to do that for every account. And that's going to be important throughout the whole course. So as we introduce more accounts in later chapters, come back to the same concept. Can I decide debit or credit as its normal balance? Then from this whole discussion of T accounts, we're going to go into something called a trial balance. And I know I skipped over a section. I'm going back to it, but this is kind of the natural resolution of what we've been talking about. A trial balance is headed up, has a heading very much like all the financial statements we saw, but this is not shown to people outside the business. It is an internal document. Still name a company, trial balance, and what date it happened on. It lists every account the company has. So every T account that we drew for our company, every account this company has is listed. They are listed in a particular order, just the way they would be across the transaction chart. Assets first, then liabilities, then the owner's equity accounts. With the final balance, the December 31st final balance in each of these accounts. If their balance was a debit, it was put in the debit column. If it's a credit, it was put in the credit column. And they show that they finally balance. That's what we're going to do on our problem. We want to make sure that all our accounts balance before we start making financial statements. So as we come back to the T accounts we've been working with, we had the 7 rules down at the bottom. We had all our T accounts up here. We're going to show that the T accounts all coming together, everything balances. Okay, let's complete a trial balance for the problem we've been working on. We'll need to list all the account names that we have. And these should be left justified. So sorry that is centered. Let me make that better. I'm going to abbreviate just to save time. Listing all our assets first. We don't say a heading, assets, or we don't total the assets, but we do list them in that order. Notes payable, and I'm just going to put capital. It should be the owner's name, comma, capital. Again, abbreviating. Utilities, expense, and cell phone expense. So these are all the T accounts that we have. And we're going to go up and get their balances. Cash, we remember it is a debit balance account. It's going to have a balance on the debit side. So I'm going to go up and go to that T account and get the balance. I want to grab the final balance, not any of the numbers in between. That's real important that we make sure we grab the right numbers. And I'm just kind of filling them in. Supplies is next. And supplies is a $3,000 balance. Equipment. These are all debits because they're all assets. And finally, vehicle. Now our assets have all filled in. We can go get the balance for accounts payable. I believe that's just over here to the left of capital, accounts payable. Oh, and I put it on the debit side. Even though I knew it was a credit, was talking about it being a credit, I did it anyway. That should be over here. Notes payable, go up to the T account. $26,000 credit balance. I have it on the credit side this time. Capital, $72,000 credit balance. Withdrawals has a debit balance. Revenue, back to the credits. And utilities expense and cell phone expense. Slide over here. There's our utilities and cell phone. Now we have all the accounts listed in our trial balance. All we have to do is total both sets of columns. Sorry. And we see that it actually does balance. We know that things are okay. We've checked. It doesn't mean there couldn't potentially be an error, but a lot of potential errors are caught by doing the trial balance. If things don't balance, then we stop. We make sure we find where the error is. Now, let's talk about a couple of things that you'll notice about a trial balance. It contains all the accounts. I want you to look at what accounts are listed in this column. Cash all the way down to vehicles, all of those, withdrawals, and the expenses. Those are all accounts that have debit as their plus side, or we would say debit normal balance. And then liabilities, capital, and revenue are on the credit side, and those are all the ones that have credit as their normal balance. If we kind of remind ourselves about the two types of T accounts, you're going to have accounts that have debit. That's the abbreviation for debit, believe it or not. DR and CR, even though there's not an R in debit anywhere. And which ones have plus, minus. So that's one way a T account could be shown. And the only other configuration is I managed to, there we go. And these guys are going to be minus and plus. So just the opposite. So what kinds of accounts look like this? Debit balance accounts. These, we'll put that up here. These are debit balance accounts. These guys would be called credit balance accounts. And which ones are they? The assets, withdrawals, and the expenses. Those are the ones that fit in this category. Let's kind of have it stretch over a little bit. And these guys, you're going to need a little extra room there too, are going to be the capital, liabilities, and the revenue accounts. So if you can hold on to two acronyms, AWE, like awesome, assets, withdrawals, expenses, they're all the debit balance accounts. And this one I abbreviate CLR and pronounce it clear. It's just an acronym. It didn't come from anywhere other than just trying to find a way to memorize the kinds of accounts that we're looking at here. So AWS and clears. If we come back up to the trial balance, we see that this column, the debit column, contains all the AW accounts. and the clear accounts are all over the credit column. You won't actually see this written at the top of a trial balance, but it's putting it here just to help us remember that that's what we're finding in these columns. If for some reason, and it is likely to happen, that you'll do a trial balance thinking you're doing it right and it won't balance. First thing I'd look at is, do you have every account? I have 12 accounts listed here. Go through and find out how many are in your problem. Make sure you have 12 listed if 12 is what's in the problem, that you haven't forgotten an account. So let's say you took care of that. Then make sure that you have all your debit balance accounts, all your A's in the debit column and all your clears in the credit column, and not vice versa, like that one I accidentally put in. I think it was the accounts payable. I tried to put it in the debit column because I was working too fast. I was already in the debit column. If I had put it on the wrong side, this would not have balanced at the bottom. So that's something to look for. Okay, I'll be putting together another video that talks about making journal entries and posting to a general ledger, and that will conclude chapter 2. So look for one last video.